So last week, my old mate Noel Whittaker, one of the most well-known financial planners in the country, and we had a bit of a debate around self-managed super funds and property, and I thought it'd be really wise for us to clarify, particularly from the Switzer point of view, what we think about this subject. And I know, Paul, you have some views on this subject as well.
Look, I think Noel raised some really good points, and there has been a lot of discussion in the press about some of the issues about having or using your super fund to borrow and to buy an investment property. But I still think it's a very valid strategy, as long as there's you keep a couple of key things in mind. One, it's a long-term strategy because there are a lot of costs in setting one of these loans up. And ultimately, if you're going to use most of the concession, which is taking the property through to when you're in pension phase, and you can take any gain out in a free of any capital gains tax. For many people, that means long term. So think about the asset 5, 10, 15, 20 years. That's the first thing. Secondly, that inside a fund, you need other assets. And, there's got to be a balance between the property and some other assets. So make sure it's not too big a proportion of your fund. And I think thirdly, Peter, that you've always got to keep some money away for a rainy day. You may need to, for some reason, have a liability in your fund, or you might want to access your money early for some reason if you can. You might want to delay when you actually start to crystallise the profits in the property. So have some other assets which you can turn into cash if you need to.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right, Paul. And I think when clients of ours come to us and want to do something like put property in a self-managed super fund, I say, well, look, let's have a look at how much money's there. And so if a client, say, had 700,000 there, and they wanted to take 200 of it as a deposit, and then borrow another 200 to buy a property worth $400,000 that, paid a reasonable rent. I think in situations like that, Paul, that could even be positively geared. Well, there's nothing wrong with that, having a $400,000 property inside a super fund, overall value $900,000 for the loan, and that goes up, and that's all right. But what worries me is when someone's got $300,000 in a super fund and they want to use $280 as a deposit and only have $20,000 left over. That would worry me. And also, if they're buying it from a developer where there's no proven track record on whether this property actually is any good for actual rents and whether tenants want to live there, they're the worrying things.
And you're right. And if you don't have enough money, then don't do it. And it comes down a little bit to, in some ways, how the banks look at whether you can service the loan or not. Some of the banks out there are still looking at things like, your concessional contributions as being a key way that you'll actually service the interest on the loan. Now, you might lose your job, or have a change, or become have some sort of serious illness where you can't work, so you can't continue to make any more concessional contributions. So make sure the other income in your fund, from dividends and from obviously the interest on the rent on the property, but interest on any bonds or cash you have, that should be able to support the interest cost on your loan. So that's another point to bear in mind. So, if something does happen that goes seriously wrong, you aren't suddenly having to deal with the bank or forced to sell the property when you don't need to. All those sort of things, which you don't want to get into.
No, and I also would say this: if you're being helped by your accountant or financial planner to buy into a property, you make sure you ask them what kind of commission they're on. And if they're on commission, let the alarm bells go off and don't even go ahead with it, because as far as I'm concerned, accountants and advisors have no right for any kickbacks for putting their clients into a property for a self-managed super fund.
Or the property agent. And there are, what we call property buyers who go and find these things. There are a lot of people running seminars, and I've been to a couple, and you've been to a couple. And we've had the calls on the radio, when we've had calls on TV, we've had emails from clients who've been to some of their seminars. I've seen some of the videos that are out there, and they're pretty scary. And they're not telling you exactly some key parts of the super law. So if someone's getting paid to actually induce you to buy the property, run away.
And I'm also worried about people because they're scared about shares, and they're running to these sorts of alternative investments. These are going to be scarier than shares, I think.
But that said, they could still be a really good part of your portfolio. And I think if you can find the right home and you've got a good long-term strategy, and you know what you're going to do with it, and you can afford to, finally go into that pension phase and then sell the property potentially free of capital gains tax, for many people, it's going to be a good strategy.
Fantastic. And in case you're wondering why Paul's looking so painful, he's just come from the dentist, but he's courageously done the super session. Paul, thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Peter.
That's a super session for one more time.